Hi, good morning, everybody. Lovely to speak to you this morning. Hope you've already had a great event so far, and hoping you will have a great rest of the day. I've got a presentation to share with you. Screen sharing doesn't seem to be working, so I'll just carry on. I'm delighted to be here to talk to you this morning. Going to be talking to you about open banking and embedded finance and how we consider those to be the future of banking. And I think this is a really exciting topic and one a lot of people are talking about right now. So I think it's going to be great to discuss this, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. So really, I think where we need to start. So what we'll be talking about today is really we'll start with what the banking landscape used to look like. What did this landscape appear to be before we've seen some of the disruptions to really set the scene? Then we're going to look at what are some of the new models banks are using, some of the challenges they have in implementing these, the opportunity for embedded finance. And this has been a massive, big buzz term within fintech. So I think this would be a great thing to explore. Um, and then our future outlook for what we're going to see with embedded finance and open banking, and a market outlook for those. So hopefully this will be really interesting for everyone. And yeah, let's get on through. So firstly, let's look at the traditional banking landscape. I think there have been some fundamental issues with the banking landscape over time. And I think what we've seen is that over time, we have seen that the traditional banking landscape has been basically very slow to react. It's been unconnected. It's seen a lot of siloed data. So that closed off data and that focus on being that way has really meant that actually it's been very difficult for banks to even share data internally, let alone externally. The fact that we've seen this has actually limited competition in the market. It's proved to be a stumbling block to increasing how competitive banks can be with each other, which has been a key goal of a lot of particularly regulatory stakeholders in this area. But because of this, we've seen that insights based on the insights based on this have really been quite poor in terms of what this means for users. So actually, I believe we should now. There we go. We have a presentation. Sorry about that. So you can see what I mean here. So really what we've seen under the existing model is that we've had sort of low value insights in terms of the data access level has been poor, and that really hasn't helped this ecosystem to develop. So what we needed to see was a big development in terms of this changing in order to really jumpstart innovation in the banking market. And I think that is now really what we are seeing. Particularly the rise of cloud banking makes data access easier. APIs, which we're all seeing has a really disruptive effect, and the effect of the pandemic have changed this. And we've seen open banking starting to emerge. And this is going to have a dramatic effect on this market. And let's explore that in a bit more detail. So let's have a look at these new banking models. So fundamentally, APIs change this equation. Obviously, we all know PSD2, and we have seen that those APIs have mandated that certain things have to be available. Open access to financial data, that is a fundamental change to how the banking system operates, which is actually really interesting. It's a great platform, however. It doesn't have to be the end of the story. And I think that's something that is very important, is realizing that now what people are doing is they're using PSD2 as a platform for creating APIs with greater scope, with access that is outside of the framework of PSD2 is more than was originally intended. And I think this is something that the market will explore. But also APIs aren't just all about open banking. They can enable banking as a service, banking as a platform, and loads of embedded finance use cases. So really what we have here is we have this single action of this availability of APIs and this new way of connecting infrastructure is really creating a new paradigm within banking, which is really interesting. And this creates massive opportunities for fintechs as well, which is really interesting as sort of an engine room for innovation. Aggregation in sort of is sort of the use case that everyone points to for open banking. That's not just an opportunity for the banks themselves. It creates a massive opportunity for fintechs. They can create all kinds of innovative products here based around sort of open banking as the initial capability. So this is really interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation. We have seen to date a lot of innovation from fintechs in this space. Payments here as well is a really interesting area. I think this is one that we will see accelerate, particularly as I'm based in the UK. The UK is a great example here in terms of we've seen open banking payments really accelerate, particularly with the effect of the pandemic and how APIs have been implemented. So I think we're going to see a lot more here. And I think that's going to be really exciting for the future of the market. And there's real potential here for wallets to add open banking capabilities so that people can bypass those traditional cards in the e-commerce ecosystem. So there's an awful lot of potential here, and there's this new banking model emerging. And this changes the equation, but also there's some challenges with this, which we're going to explore now. So we've got some challenges for banks here, and this is really important to understand. Banks fundamentally risk disintermediation, so they can be cut out of this process to an extent. Aggregators in an open banking sense, they can be used to take over part of that journey, or another bank that user uses could try and take over that user journey and sort of bypass that bank the bank uses, that the user traditionally used. So really, we're seeing the battleground in banking shifting much more towards user experience as a differentiator. And I think this is a real sort of effect of open banking and the impact that's having. I think fundamentally as well, banks need to operate in a fundamentally different way. That's difficult. Banking's been around for a long time. A lot of banks are very well established. They have business models that are fundamental to how they operate. So change is difficult here. We have seen a lot of change to date, and I think that's a testament to how well banks have been able to react to what's going on in this market. And I think that's to be encouraged. But change needs to be thoroughly planned. It needs to be fully road mapped out. So that's really important. And I think we will see sort of that planning process again carrying on to as open banking and other capabilities become more advanced. I think new tech stacks are important here as well. Obviously, cloud banking is a transition that's been happening anyway, and we're seeing a lot of banks already move to a sort of fully cloud agile solution. But really changing the systems without interruptions to the customers and without some of the IT service problems we've seen at banks can be challenging. So there is sort of an element of risk here. And this really means that banks need to effectively plan how they're going to do this, but they also need to make sure that they don't reduce the quality of that user experience, because that's what this is all about. So let's look at embedded finance. This is really a sort of catchy term we've heard in the fintech space for a while now, and I think it's very useful to unpack this. Embedded finance fundamentally means embedding financial services in previously non-financial areas. It's a new way of thinking about financial services, and it promises actually a lot of exciting changes in the market. For example, bringing non-banks into banking We've all thought about big techs here, and that's where a lot of the emphasis has been in terms of, does Amazon become a bank? That is where we're seeing things such as banking as a service actually have a really big impact. These big techs don't need to become banks. They can let a third-party service provider handle all the licensing, all the compliance activities, that they can sort of third-party that all out. All they need to do is design a great user experience and leverage their user bases. So I think something like bank as a service as a part of embedded finance is really breaking down the barriers to joining this really competitive banking market. And I think we're going to see sort of repercussions throughout the banking space going forward. And it's not just big techs. I think telcos is one where we've seen a lot of innovation in this area. We've seen a lot of that to date. I think big telcos are looking for ways they can increase their revenue. And fundamentally, I think this financial services is a great way to do that. Banking as a service enables them to really do that in a very effective way. So I think we'll see a lot more of that going forward. And they've got a great relationship with their users. They have generally long-standing relationships with users. So that can be a great way to add another string to their bow. Embedded insurance, bringing insurance into e-commerce checkout processes, that again is a great opportunity, and embedding different things in this e-commerce checkout process. This is really high potential. You could see banks, for example, embedding buy now, pay later into e-commerce checkouts. So there's a lot of potential with this model, and we're already seeing a huge amount of innovation here. I think what we need to see is just more engagement with merchants who are sort of key targets for some of these e-commerce initiatives. And we need to see sort of thorough plans from sort of all participants in the area, just about how they're going to tap this opportunity. But I think we're going to see a lot of innovation here. And personally, I'm very excited about embedded finance. I think it's going to be great. Essentially, it means more competition, and I think that's a surprise to no one. The more more things develop in this market, the more competitive they're going to be. So, I think this is it's going to be great for the future of the market, and we're going to see a lot of changes. So, potential market that people will vendors will be able to explore. These APIs are really making entry into financial services much easier. So I think this is going to be a significant revenue enabler. Buy now, pay later is going to be really significant here. And I think obviously we've all seen buy now, pay later as a massive opportunity. It's something that's being explored by banks as well as sort of service providers. So I think it's going to be hugely interesting. And also embedded insurance in the checkout process, as we mentioned, that's a really important way to increase the uptake of insurance. And so I think that's going to be really interesting as well. And looking at open banking as well and our future outlook for this, we have focused on payments because I think this is a really important area of open banking. This is something that banks can sort of take back from maybe even card transactions or wallet transactions. So it's interesting here. And again, we're seeing this over 100 billion in 2026. So this is going to, again, be very highly significant. Massive growth, particularly within Europe, as PSD2 enables a lot more access and payments to be used in different ways, integrated into different systems. I think we're only just now seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of what open banking can be used for and will be used for. And I think we will see this beginning to be a fundamental threat to how cards are currently used in e-commerce. So there's a lot of potential for disruption here. And I think what we're going to see over the next 5 years is that disruption being borne out by the market. That is sort of all I had on this subject. I think it's a massively interesting subject, and I'm sure your conversations, all of you will be having today, will really be adding a lot of flavour to this topic. So from my point of view, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I'm on the Umbrella platform, like I'm sure all of you are. So reach out if you would like to discuss any of this further. And once again, thank you to the organisers for letting me speak today. It's been an absolute pleasure.